And our perspective on it at the moment is one that is quite cause and effect and reactionary. You know, I'm having an experience and I need to do something in order to transform that experience. And it's a wonderful thing. You know, if that's the impetus, then woohoo, great. That's a really great place to start. And it really does need to start because, you know, the state of mental health in this country and for the world that matter is so terrible. And it's becoming increasingly more difficult to justify it given what we understand about the physiology, what we understand about the brain, what we understand about human, dynamics, and our propensity to destroy things. It's disproportionate what we understand about the mind relative to what we understand about everything else. And we always save the best for last, I think, as a human thing. The final frontier is the human mind. It's not out there, it's not outer space, it's inner space. And I think what we're seeing is the emergence of this magnificent transformation that humanity so desperately needs to embrace happening right now. And what's happening is and I still haven't come close to answering your question yet. What's happening right now is the realization that the mind, the function of the mind, the quality and the condition of the mind underlies every aspect of the human experience and is actually responsible for everything that we're seeing in the world right now, whether it be in our immediate world with our personal relationships, or whether it be in our work environment, our professional career, and just society and culture at large. It's all a byproduct of our thinking, our belief systems, which stem from either the condition of our nervous system or the state of our brain. And so the reason I went to a great length to describe this I want to create a context. So there are 3 different types of meditations. These are very broad categories, by the way. The first is described as either contemplative or concentrating meditation, where we utilize some sort of object of focus or a theme or a concept to reflect upon or focus on in order to elicit a continuum of awareness. What we're after is a continuum of awareness. I don't want to be distracted by that and that and that. I just want a continuum of this one thing. And so certain techniques are about cultivating that capability on the surface of the mind, as you described. And then that's one. And the traditions that are primarily interested in that are Zen, certain Buddhist traditions that are generally not terribly concerned with anything in the world. It's mainly a practice of monks and for people that don't really have any interest in interacting or contributing to society in any active way. They prefer to just kind of sit in one place and repeatedly do this exercise, so to have greater internal introspective capability. The next is the non-directed attention practices. Vipassana falls under this category. Most of the Buddhist practices, because Buddha, or the Sakyamuni, he was only known as the Buddha about 200 years after he lived, actually. The Sakyamuni, or this man that was known as the Buddha, had a very extraordinary journey to arrive at what he was teaching before he died, and how his teachings are interpreted now, particularly in the West, are considerably different to what he was actually teaching. But that's a whole other lecture series. It's very fascinating if you're interested in meditation. But these techniques are about innocently observing the nature of the mind, the nature of the body, and the incessant involuntary tendency to bite on a theme and roll with it and participate in it. The aim of these non-directed attention techniques is to be able to let go and just allow the activity to play out without being involved. This is a very difficult thing to do. That state is actually known as Vipassana, or the Western interpretation is referred to as mindfulness. The word mindfulness is used as a buzzword these days, but it's largely misunderstood. Mindfulness is not a practice as such, it is a state. Mindfulness is the state where one is actually experiencing the relinquishing of the incessant grabbing of mental activity and participating. It's just being able to let the mind flow. And this practice it's an advanced practice. And it derives from a monastic tradition, primarily practiced by individuals that have a hairdo like myself, that wear robes, and they sit in monasteries. And they have the luxury of hour upon hour, day in, day out, to do this thing, to cultivate this capability. And for the Western mind, it's very, very challenging. Very challenging. And this is why, largely, because Buddhism has had a huge movement in through the West over the last sort of 35 years, this is why meditation gets a bit of a bad rap, because a lot of the techniques that are being introduced to the West are actually designed for monks. They're not designed for people that live in the world and that don't have 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the evening to just sit there and get into that zone. You know, it's not practical.
You could do that, but you may not get much work done the rest of the day.
Exactly. You know,
and there's not much disturbance in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's going to interrupt you.
No one's going to bother you. Yeah. And you know, it's a wonderful practice. It's a beautiful, noble thing, actually. But is it practical? It's debatable. And so then the third technique, the third category is known as automatic transcending techniques, where the mind is able to be, through some vehicle, generally a mantra, a particular type of mantra, that effortlessly leads the mind beyond the gross level of thinking, beyond the activity of participation, into subtler, more de-excited, more coherent states of awareness that create an opportunity for the mind to have reprieve and repose. And after having that experience of transcending into deeper, quieter states, may emerge imbued with the qualities of these deeper, more expansive states of awareness, kind of like a cloth to dye, where we dunk the mind into something and we pull it out, and it's imbued with the quality of the dye water. The mind comes out and it's slightly more refreshed, slightly more dynamic. Is it conscious of what it experienced in those deeper states? Not necessarily, but as a result of practicing, the mind begins to become aware of its nature by virtue of being exposed to the deeper levels of it. And it's, in my opinion, having studied all three, many techniques in all three of those categories under masters, that the latter, the third technique that I just described to you, is probably the most effective and appropriate for people who live in the world and have jobs. Pardon?
We have lots.
Yes, because and this is a greater discussion to have, what's the purpose of meditating? Okay, so I described that the reason why we meditate is because we're reactive to our stress state, and we want to have a better experience. We're sick of thinking things that we don't want to think about. We want to have greater control of our mind. We want to be less reactive when something's happening that's outside of the spectrum of our expectation. We want to be more dynamic. We want to be more loving, more compassionate, more creative, more dynamic. We want to access that feeling that we have inside of ourselves, that we know ourselves to be, that we're not expressing. We find ourselves kind of repulsed and almost disgusted by the way we behave sometimes. And we watch the way we behave, and we're like, I can't believe I just said that. I can't believe I just did that. And what is that? This is a condition. And so we're reacting with a condition. We're like, anything. My clients, they come to me, and I'm their last port of call. Their wife's about to leave them, their husband's about to leave them. The doctor said, you need to sort this business out pretty quickly. And they've tried everything else. And they're like, my mate told me you did wonders, what can you do? And, invariably they learn a very simple technique and, life starts to change very quickly. But this is reactive. So to place into context what we're talking about here, the India's gift to the West, we haven't even uncovered the gift that India has given us. This gift that they've given us is a non-reactive, prospective vision of leading us out of a very, very complex situation that humanity faces itself in right now, which is that we are confused about who we are, what we are, our interdependent responsibility to each other, and how to enact that on a day-to-day level that isn't some sort of massive we are the world, let's change the world thing, but on a very practical here and now level. How can we interact with each other and apply this knowledge, this understanding of who we are, what we are, and let that propagate the change on a very organic grassroots level?
So that's a beautiful, eloquent description of the different meditation techniques. And I guess the reason we wanted to bring that up and discuss it is because, as we saw from the show of hands, there are many in the room who are existing meditators and have a daily practice. There are many who've tried something and for whatever reason they've given up. But there are so many different techniques around. One might suit one person, the other might suit the other person. If you have had the experience of trying something and you don't think anything was happen, don't just drop meditation altogether, but try something else. There's plenty of brochures out the front there as well. You can grab a brochure on the way out and try and include meditation as part of your daily life. So we've heard all the reasons, and very compelling reasons, why meditation is good for us. There's scientific and health reasons. There's corporate reasons, a sporting field, for general peace and well-being. So why aren't we all doing it? We know that it's good for us. We want to incorporate this in our life. We want to make this a habit. Why aren't we doing this? And what can we do to make meditation part of our life? I remember listening to a talk by Ian Gawler, and Ian couldn't be here tonight, but as a medical student, and Ian said, meditation needs to be like diarrhea. When you need to go, you need to go. And so he said that should be your daily practice. When you need to go and do your meditation practice, you excuse yourself from everyone else and you find your corner, you find your place, and you do your meditation.